And so a lot of what I've learned over the last few years from my work and also from being here is how to bring what we do here into my work with people. And it's been really exciting because I've had an experience of, I've had lots of weird experiences being a new psychologist, being thrown into positions of looking after people when I'm quite young and dealing with serious mental health issues and drug and alcohol, and I didn't have the tools or the skills. I had what I was learnt, but no one tells you how to look after yourself. No one. It's just like go out there and if you get a bit tired and burn out, do some yoga and go for a walk on the beach. It's like, well, okay, but it didn't really work because then it just separates my nice life from my shit work life. And then I'm going to finish the walk on the beach and I've got to go to work. You've got to wait 10 hours to go to yoga. And so you just have this, like, where you wish you didn't do that horrible middle bit, but there was nothing about integrating what you were doing and loving that. And there was a point where I was hiding from clients. So I had this, some people know this story, I worked in a drug and alcohol service, and wow, I just couldn't handle this client. I just didn't know how to, I didn't know anything about cords, I didn't know anything about boundaries, I had my energy sucked out of me, and it was so uncomfortable and unpleasant, and I really resisted seeing this client. And I'd book him in, and I'd be ready for whatever way it could be, which is probably a big brick wall, be ready for him, and then he'd never come. So I don't know, I'm busy. Because he'd be there for his methadone, but he wouldn't want to come in. And he'd always come when I didn't want him to, like he'd see me and go, hey, I need to see you now, and it's really quite hard to say no. So when he came in, I used to hide behind the door, which is a little immature for a psychologist in a methadone clinic. But the funny thing about that was I wasn't the only one. So I didn't even know it was weird. Probably about what really drove me to go, this is really wrong. I really want to swear. Anyway, this is really not okay. This is not how to work with people. Working in methadone clinic, I went straight pretty quickly from my degree to drug and alcohol counselling, which was a baptism of fire. And one of my jobs was working in a methadone clinic as a caseworker counsellor. Don't do a lot of counselling in a methadone clinic because you just simply can't, because it's all survival issues. So you do a lot of case management, keeping people alive, if they're suicidal, finding them places to live, trying to sort out issues with HIV or hepatitis. So it's not a lot of, you can't really sit there in therapy much. However, I was working in that environment, and you can probably imagine a public methadone clinic is a interesting place. It's very full of, it's very heavy. It's a heavy place to work. There's even the staff, a lot of people have worked there for a long time. Some people are really jaded, some people want to save the world. You have a whole variety of people. And then you have clients who have survived up until this point, which is pretty good. They're not dead, they haven't overdosed. In order to survive, they've had to be a bit clever, a bit cunning. They could be manipulative, they can be sweet as pie. There's a whole lot, you get a whole variety. And they've all done what they had to do to survive to that point. So I was working there, and I had a particular client, and I don't think I'll ever forget him. And he was passed on to me when I took the job, and he was passed on to me particularly. I got this whole caseload, but then I had this whole 1 hour meeting just about this one client. Okay. So he was very hard to be with. I found it very difficult to work with him because I'd be exhausted at the end. I didn't know what was going on, but I was like, oh my God, this guy, I don't know what to do. And every time you tried to get somewhere, something would be wrong, and then he'd tell you were terrible and the other one was better. And so you try and be better then. You try and get the approval back of your client and do what he wanted. And so he was pretty good at organising you into being whatever he wanted you to be and making you feel really bad about it at the same time. And I couldn't understand what was going on. But then what I started doing, so I started booking him in for set sessions so I could get ready and kind of have my little barriers around me so that I wouldn't have to like give all that away, all that energy. I wouldn't have to be so exhausted. So I'd be all ready and he wouldn't show up, which was great. I would be happy about that. But he would come into the clinic every day to get his methadone. So when I'd see him come in the door on the days I didn't have an appointment, I would hide behind the door, if possible. So I would hide behind the office door out the back. He'd come in, get his methadone, go. When my colleagues saw me hiding behind the door, they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just hiding from him. Oh, okay, we'll tell you when he goes. No one questioned it. What are you doing? Why do you need to do that? Do you need any help with him? What's going on? How come you need to hide? But I was going, I think there's something wrong here. But it took me a while to think that, because actually a lot of them hid from their clients, and maybe, yeah, a lot of them hid from the clients. And the most extreme one was the doctor, who would go to get from one set of offices to the other set of offices, you had to cross the reception, which was behind glass, and there was the waiting room. And the doctor, who was very tall, would bend double. And then he would scuttle, so he was as low as the desk, and so the clients couldn't see, till he got to the other set of offices. So he was hiding from his clients too. Because if they saw him, they'd be, doctor, 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 and they'd call him, and he wanted to be seen as the really nice doctor, so he would never ignore them. So instead of ignoring them or holding his boundaries, he'd just shoot through. So I'm like, oh, well, this is clearly what you do. Extreme place to work, just got to hide. But after a while, I started working with someone. I started working with Jenny, who mentored me and helped me with that, and kind of helped me understand exchange of energy and how I would be giving energy away, and how I could maybe not do that, and how I could set different kinds of boundaries that weren't big fat walls and barriers that I'd have to put up and put down and put up and put down, but they were just there all the time with everyone. And that didn't stop me relating. They didn't stop me loving. They didn't stop me caring. I didn't have to shut off, but I didn't have to be approved of, and I didn't have to give everything away I had. There was all. It took a while to learn, because I had, like many people in the helping professions, we all want to help. Took a while to learn, but I realised that I could help so much more like that than I ever could, giving everything I had away. So, because not only was I holding my own boundaries and keeping things back to help, but I was showing them what to do, because their boundaries were all wrong as well. So it was an example, and it could be discussed openly. Oh, you're not helping me. Oh, well, this is what I'm doing. This, I'm doing this, and this is helpful for you because, you're going to start to be independent. You can do this. You don't need me. So it was actually one of the most helpful things I could learn for my own sanity, but then for my clients. It's no help to your clients when you give them everything you got. Makes them worse. I worked, obviously, in a methadone clinic. It's called what they call a harm minimisation approach, which since about the 70s, maybe, and on, has become really popular in terms of drug treatment. So harm minimisation is not abstinence-based. Harm minimisation is, as it says, minimising harm, reducing harm to supposedly the drug user. And that is true in the extent that harm minimisation is needle exchange programs. So yes, less HIV, less Hep C, giving out condoms, even nicotine patches, and things where you either use replacement drugs like methadone, nicotine patches, or you give people tools to use their drugs with, like injecting rooms. There's one in King's Cross in Sydney, or as I say, clean needles, things like that. So I was trained in this model, and I really like this model. This was presented to me. It's like, this is the new way. This is the great way to go. This is like, we're not pretending that people are just going to go off drugs and turning a blind eye. We're, minimising harm. But as I worked in it, especially with the methadone, and I actually saw people get worse. So when they were on heroin, they were ill, but they were in their life. They were, it was like they had a purpose. I got to go get my heroin. I got to get the money to do it. They had goals, and they were reaching them, for want of a better word. They were doing stuff, and living, feeling like they were achieving what they needed. They'd go onto methadone and then be part of this bureaucratic institution which kind of stripped them of a lot of rights, and they had to come at certain times. They were treated like they had to do urine tests, you know, things like that. And they lost a lot of motivation or will or anything. It was like, and it engendered in them a kind of a sense of entitlement about things. And, you know, things like AA were used and NA, but abstinence-based was considered very old-fashioned. But what I've really realised is harm minimisation, and I still agree with needle exchange programs if people are going to, you know, sure, you know, reduce the spread of disease, but harm minimisation is really about minimising harm to society. So it's really about, if you give people methadone, they're going to be less likely to mug you, rob your house, steal your car, because they don't need the money and they're not that desperate, they're not going through withdrawals. And so for me, as I was working there, I suddenly saw, I don't think this is really minimising harm to my clients. But it certainly is minimising harm to the rest of the rest of society who isn't on drugs. You know, it's keeping them a bit dull, like the sleepy. They're not dangerous. You know, people are scared of them. Oh, they're on their methadone, they just walk down the street like this. They get Valium as well, often in methadone clinics. So yeah, I mean, you can't really grow personally, spiritually, or any other way when you're on drugs. So in terms of the whole benefit for the person and actually getting anywhere and any kind of growth, abstinence-based treatment is really the highest, is what you'd look for as the ideal solution, the highest kind of solution that they could have, because you need to go, for them to heal, they need to be abstinent and then heal whatever's caused this. There's the mental, emotional, spiritual things that are going wrong for them that they're self-medicating. It's like, okay, with a supportive kind of, you know, in support, with a supportive atmosphere in a supportive place, whatever they need, to go through those withdrawals, to get under that, then deal with those other aspects of them that needed the healing that they started taking the drugs for anyway, because you'll find with most of them they have a neglected childhood or abuse background or other things that they're just trying to forget, and you can understand. But it's not helping them. And then giving them methadone and Valium and, you know, there's for methamphetamines, there's replacement drugs for that as well that they come in and take. It's just holding the status quo. That's it. So it's stopping them going up and down and crazy and this and that. So it's just trying to keep everyone so that we all can live our lives and not worry about the unpredictable drug addicts around us. So, yeah, for highest healing opportunity, abstinence-based would be the only way to achieve that.